Okay, I think the last bit of my chapter 3 slides are on the subject of a project template. So eventually typing all of this over and over again is going to become old. You might just copy paste it from somewhere like an online compiler. Um, online GDB online. If you switch to C, C++, you could copy this code. So Control C and then Control V. You can do that, but of course, there's a better way, probably considered a better way. Uh, in the classroom that I teach in, the computers reset to they clear user settings, unfortunately. So if you use classroom computers, this won't necessarily work for you. But if you have your own machine and you have Visual Studio installed, you might like to do what I'm about to do. So if you select project from the menu bar here, these are all menu options. There is a keyboard shortcut. If you type Alt P, it's a nice way of getting to the menu options. There's a suggestively named option called export template. So we have to save first. Let me cancel and redo that. Project export template. Project template, we can select that. Okay. And hit next. And then we give this template a name. And then we call it basic hello world skeleton or template, something like this. Template description, maybe we want to give a description. We say oops, it does what it says. And we can even include a little image here. So you got a smiley face from the internet. So just, saving, right click and save image as this. So maybe we apply that and we can just automatically import. Yes, display an Explorer window. Um, we don't necessarily need to do that. And we click finish. And it doesn't seem like anything happened, but now if we go Control Shift N, which is a keyboard shortcut for a file new project, as you can see, Control Shift N, the basic Hello World program, the smiley face didn't turn out so good, but it's now one of our templates. And if we type in basic, then this will be a result that pops up, and then it'll come up in your recent project templates. So if we double click this and we save this somewhere, we call this maybe test of template functionality. And then we click create. And it doesn't seem that anything happened, but if you say Alt V to bring up the view menu in the Solution Explorer, and now we have a source file. It's not an empty project. We can double click and that's our Hello World program. And you can alter this to whatever your preference is. Maybe you don't want to use namespace standard. Maybe you want to say instead using standard cout, using standard inline, and so on. Okay, so now we're going to get to something more interesting. This is the template was actually not the last topic in my slides. So far, we've just been displaying output and reading input from the keyboard like this. But let's work with files. So let's read in a file and display it to the terminal. And let's write out to a file. These are very good operations to be able to do. Of course, not only the simplest of programs only rely on some simple user input as text. We want to be able to read in files and do things with data in files, like the website called Kaggle. Kaggle is machine learning, data science community. You can download data sets. Go to data sets here, and you can train artificial intelligence models, try to predict stock information, try to predict stocks, where they're going to be at, this type of thing. I haven't looked at this previously, so usually there's on this website there's a there's a CSV file here, and I think I might have to, here's all the CSV file. It's a time and a price and an identifier or something like this. I don't know anything about stocks. But we could download that file and then read in that file and add up all these numbers or something like that. Kaggle's a very good website to be aware of, probably. Maybe you could create a username, sign in or register and make some contributions and make some connections that way. Okay, but let's read in a file, a text file. So if we want to read in files, we actually have to pound include a header file called fstream. That means file stream. This is input output stream. This is file stream. And I'm going to say using standard IF stream input file stream. And I'm also going to say using standard output file stream. The alternative again to this is just to say using namespace standard. And if we do that, then we don't need either of these things. So whichever approach you like, there are good reasons for both. So the syntax here is a little bit complicated. Let's first write to an output file, OF stream. Output file is going to be the name of this variable of type OF stream. It's not an integer type or a double type or a character type. It's a more complicated type, which is called an OF stream type, an output file stream type. You can right click and say go to definition, and you can see some complicated stuff going on, but we're not going to dig into that. Output file, and if I open a brace, you'll see this 1 of 8. So there are 8 different flavors and 8 different ways in which you can create an output file object. I'm going to say, and there's some wonderful stuff going on here. Open mode. Do you want to append to a file? Do you want to open a file? And there are some complexities going on there that we're not going to get into. I'm going to call this output.txt text file. Generally, Windows operating system uses these 3 letters, this file extension for text files. Okay, now if I type output file and I say hello world, question mark, and I'm using the same operator as I used with cout. This is an example of an operator. As you can see, it says this text operator right here. Okay, so let's run this and see what happens. The terminal is no longer displaying hello world. Okay. Did we create this file? I don't see it over here. Let's right click on the project name, not the solution name, but the project name. And open folder in File Explorer. And we see this file now. It was created September 17th, 11:34 a.m., which is the time that it was just 1 minute ago, approximately. It's a text document. I have my machine set to open text documents with Notepad by default. If you'd like to change that, you can say open with, choose another app, and scroll down, and you select always or once. So always will set it to be the default. So I use Notepad, and I forget where it is, where the software is. Okay, hello world got written. Okay, now if we could write multiple lines. And something interesting has happened here. Hello world. We wrote it previously, so you might expect to see hello world, hello world, hello world again, hello world, and again. But when we open in this default mode, it actually overwrites the previous contents of the file. So let's take a look at that. So we now wrote at 1136. If we double click, open this, this is what we see, which corresponds to this right here. Okay, so that's how we, very simply, that's how we write to an output file. I don't go into detail on this in my slides, but the open mode, ios base, let's just type that, ios : base, whatever this means. And let's see, I just brought up a Stack Overflow website to double check myself on this. If we type a : maybe standard ios base. Let's see, what's our second argument here? ios base : open mode. ios base : open mode. Let's see what was appearing there. App. Let's see if app means append. Append as in append to a file. And so we wrote to this file just a minute ago. Now let's see if this is a way of adding to what we wrote to. So I ran that, no output appeared on the terminal, and I actually had that file open. So let's do this again one more time. And we'll right click and open folder in File Explorer. Output.txt got written to just a minute ago. And I think I'm still screen sharing. I was just checking that. Got written to just a minute ago, and we're checking if this append is what it's, if that is doing what it seems like it might be doing. Yes, it is. So that's how to append. If you would like to use that, definitely is more useful in certain instances than just overriding. All right, so let's read in that input file, or let's read in that file that we output. Let's say if stream input file, and the input file's name is output.txt, and let's just try to read that and write it to the terminal. So we might declare a string variable and say line, call it line of text. And if cin reads things using this operator and it stores it in line, just like we did with the output file here. Let me comment this out. Maybe we say input file and we direct that input from the input file, which is called output.txt, into the line. And then maybe we put out that line to the terminal. And that says hello, comma, space. All right. So remember how cin only read keyboard input up until a space character. So we used getLine in order to get a line of text. And in order to use getLine, we had to say #include string. So instead of using this syntax, we'll say instead getLine, and we won't say cn comma line like we did previously. Instead, we'll say input file comma line. And then so I'm going to comment that out. And then we'll see if that entire line of text, which again was hello comma world, gets printed. And it does. Right. And if you want to read in all of those lines of text, we haven't talked about loops or arrays yet. So in this case, maybe we would just have to say string line 2, string line 3, which is not a particularly nice way to write this code. But we'll talk about it, better approaches later. So I'm just copy pasting line 2, line 3. I can say C out line 2, line 3. And there we go. We can do that in a bit of a different way. We could right click here. Maybe we want to put this under this resource files filter, and we say new item, and we come to utility text file, and we maybe name this some text. And this .txt will automatically get appended to that file name. So now we have some text, and we can type and put some text in here. And in this case, we would want to rename our input file as sumtext.txt. And you want to make sure that this sumtext.txt is in the same, if you want to put it somewhere else, you could say something like C::, users, username, desktop, and you can refer to it this way. But if you just include double quotes here, this file needs to be in the same location. So if we open folder and File Explorer, now we see sumtext.txt created at a very strange date for some reason. I say save, and now, okay, the date is reasonable. That was very interesting. But if we, this is another way of creating a file in this folder and reading it in. So let's see, we should see something like this as the first 3 lines when we run this program. And we do. There we go. I didn't put a space between any of these, but if we were to change this and rerun this program, then we see that output as expected. Again, if you want to read all of these lines and do it in a way that's not silly like this, we need to get to the topic of loops to be able to handle that. It is an interesting thing to try to read a file that is not a text file. So let's see. Let me switch to my desktop here. And I'm going to right click on this file name and say copy as path. And I'm going to put it here. So I'm going to try to read an image file in. And this problem, it says incorrectly formed universal name. That means I'm trying to use the escape character, the backslash. I need to make that a /. Okay, so now if we attempt to display the contents of smiley.png, it says e umlaut png, and then there's some blank lines of text. So a simple takeaway from this is not a text file, it's an image file, and there are special properties of image file. there's special properties, and we can't read this in as simply. We actually have to use one option is to use something called OpenCV, Open Computer Vision. This is a nice way of it's a library for manipulating image files, like changing RGB to gray values, grayscale, black and white. Also, computer vision, teaching a computer how to recognize a cat versus a dog, for instance, is the more complicated use of it. But we're not going to get into OpenCV in this class. So be aware of file types when you try to read in input files or write to an output file. If you try to write to a file with on Windows, if you try to write to a file with an extension that's not a text file, then potentially that could be problematic. Like if you try to write to a PDF file, we run this, there's no output on the terminal, there was no error, no obvious error. We open folder and file explorer. Now output.pdf on my machine is set to open with Adobe Acrobat. If I try to open that with Adobe Acrobat, we'll see this error message. It could not read the PDF because it's not a supported file type, etc. We might be able to edit this with Notepad and see hello world. Yes, we do. So that's something to be aware of, but you generally wouldn't want to name an output file output.pdf in this instance. Okay. Okay, but that is pretty much the entirety of my content for the third chapter of the Malik 8th edition textbook.